At my wife's stepdaughter's wedding, in front of hundreds of guests, she grabbed the microphone, laughed, and humiliated me. She said I was not real family, just an outsider who should know his place. The room went completely silent. My wife said nothing. In that moment, I realized the truth I had ignored for years. I was never a husband to them, only a wallet and a convenience. I stood up, walked out of the wedding, left the house forever, and cut all contact. But 1 hour later, my phone would not stop ringing. Panic filled every call. They had just discovered that I was the one legally holding the family's assets, the wedding debts, and the business contracts they depended on. What they didn't know was that I had already uncovered their secret: fake signatures, lies told to partners, and years of betrayal behind my back. That public humiliation was the final straw. I withdrew everything and handed the evidence to my lawyer, changing their future in a single decision. If you want to hear how karma struck back and how I rebuilt my life from nothing, subscribe to the channel now and don't miss the full story. I was reviewing a set of change orders when Denise called from the kitchen in Houston. "Marcus, can you come here a second?" I left my laptop open on the dining table. The project in Atlanta didn't pause just because I was home, but I'd learned to move like it did, quietly, without making anyone feel interrupted. Denise stood by the counter with her phone in her hand, her mouth already set in that careful line she used when she wanted something to sound reasonable. Emily's name showed on the screen. "She's asking about the florist deposit," Denise said. The final number changed. I didn't ask why it changed. That was part of the routine. Decisions happened. I heard about them after. "How much?" I said. Denise read it off like she was checking the weather. A few hundred turned into a couple thousand, just like that. I felt my jaw tighten, then loosen again. 45 years on this earth taught me that tension didn't pay bills, and it didn't keep peace either. It just sat in your chest and waited. Emily came over later that evening, stepping through the front door like it belonged to her. She didn't greet me first. She never did. "Mom, I need you to tell him we're running out of time," she said, looking past me toward the hallway. I was right there, close enough to smell the vanilla lotion she always wore, close enough to hear every word, still invisible when she wanted me to be. "Emily, I can hear you," I said. Not sharp, just plain. She turned her eyes toward me, quick and flat. "Good, then you can pay faster," she said. "This wedding isn't going to wait." Denise let out a small laugh, the kind meant to smooth over rough edges. "She's stressed, baby. It's a lot." Emily sat down without asking, pulled up a spreadsheet on her phone, and started listing costs like she was presenting to a board. Venue upgrades, chairs, linen changes, a last-minute second-line band because New Orleans needed to feel like New Orleans. She didn't mention my opinion once. She didn't mention my name at all. I watched her talk to Denise, watched Denise nod along, and I felt something old stir, something I'd buried after my first marriage ended. That familiar fear that if I pushed back, I'd lose the little place I had left. So I stayed quiet. The next weekend, we drove to New Orleans for a planning meetup at the hotel. Emily led the conversation in a private room off the lobby like she was the one hosting. When the planner asked about the budget cap, Emily didn't answer. She glanced at Denise. Denise looked at me. "Marcus will handle it," Denise said. Emily smiled, finally looking straight at me. "We just need another $5,000 by Monday," she said. "Don't make this difficult." My throat went dry. I nodded once, because nodding was easier than arguing in front of strangers. Then I excused myself to the restroom, walked past the elevators instead, and kept going until the night air hit my face. My phone buzzed with another message from Emily before I even reached the corner, and I let it buzz in my pocket while my feet carried me down the block. My phone kept buzzing as I walked, but I didn't pull it out until I found a quiet spot by a closed coffee shop. Emily's message sat there like a bill. "Monday, don't make this difficult." I slid the phone back into my pocket and headed to the hotel. Denise was upstairs. So were the planners, the binders, the smiles that came out when money showed up on time. In the elevator, I practiced the same face I used at work when a subcontractor tried to push a mistake onto my schedule. Calm, neutral, no fuel. Denise didn't ask where I'd gone when I came in. She glanced up from the bed, saw my shoes still on, then looked back at her screen. "Emily said you stepped out," she said. "Needed air." "Well, she's stressed, Marcus. This is important to her." Important. That word landed heavy. because it always seemed to mean the same thing in this house. Do what you're told, and do it quietly. I waited for Denise to say something else, anything that sounded like partnership. Nothing came. She typed a reply to someone, thumbs moving fast, eyes avoiding mine. The next morning we met Denise's relatives in the hotel lobby. Her sister Sheila hugged Denise, nodded at me like I was a coworker she barely remembered, and kept talking. "We're doing brunch at Café du Monde after this," Sheila said. "Emily's got everything handled, except, the usual." She didn't finish the sentence, but her eyes did. The usual meant money. The usual meant me. At brunch, the comments stayed just polite enough to pretend they weren't comments. "Marcus, you still working those Atlanta jobs?" Sheila asked. "Must be nice. Big projects, big checks." Before I could answer, her husband chuckled. "Just don't let him disappear when it's time to pay for family," he said, like it was a joke everyone understood. A few people laughed. Denise smiled with them. Emily stirred her coffee and didn't even look up. I didn't snap. I didn't correct him. I chewed my beignet and let powdered sugar collect at the corner of my mouth like proof I'd been sitting there taking it. The whole table felt like a soft circle tightening, not with fists, but with assumptions. Cheap ones, convenient ones. On the flight back to Atlanta for work, my inbox was full. A vendor had replied all to an email thread about the wedding decor, tagging me directly. Waiting on payment confirmation from Marcus Johnson. I hadn't even been included in the earlier messages. My name got added when the check was due. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone lit up again. Denise's mother, Denise's cousin. Then a group text with people I barely spoke to, all of them chiming in with updates that weren't really updates. Emily said we need to lock in the band. Don't forget the rehearsal dinner. Denise told me you're handling the hotel blocks. No one asked. They announced. That night, I met David Miller near my job site in Atlanta. We didn't do anything dramatic. We sat in his truck with the windows cracked and the engine off, eating sandwiches from a gas station like two men who'd run out of patience for fancy. David listened while I spoke in pieces, careful not to sound like I was complaining. "So let me get this straight," he said, wiping his hands on a napkin. "You're paying, but you're not choosing. You're signing, but you're not reading. You're responsible, but you're not respected." I stared at the dashboard, at the dust caught in the seams. "It's not like that." David didn't argue. He just nodded once. "Then tell me what it is like." I tried to answer, but all I had were excuses dressed up as loyalty. My phone buzzed again, Denise this time. "Did you see Emily's message? Please just handle it." I typed back, deleted it, typed again, then set the phone face down between the seats while David waited, quiet, letting the silence do its work. David didn't fill the silence for me. He just watched my hands, the way they kept moving even when I wasn't doing anything. Thumb rubbing the edge of my phone, fingers tapping my knee like I could tap my way out of the mess. "You don't have to burn the house down," he said, "but you do have to look at the paperwork." I gave him a tired smile. "It's family stuff. Family signs contracts too, Marcus." Back at my apartment in Atlanta, I opened my laptop and searched my email by Denise's last name. Threads popped up that I'd forgotten about. Old PDFs, title documents, a refinance packet from 2 years ago with my signature on the last page and Denise's handwriting on the sticky note attached. "Just sign. It's faster if it's in your name." At the time, it sounded like trust. Now it read like a strategy. The rumor found me the next day in a way rumors usually do. Sideways, through someone who wasn't trying to be cruel. A guy named Trevor worked for one of our suppliers. We weren't friends, but we'd grabbed lunch a couple times on site. He caught me near the trailers and lowered his voice like he was doing me a favor. "Hey man, I don't know what's going on with your people in Houston, but just be careful, all right?" "My people?" Trevor shrugged. "Heard you got money issues at home. Somebody said you're tight with cash, like you're hiding stuff." I stared at him long enough that he held his hands up. "Not my business, you know how folks talk." He walked off, leaving that sentence hanging. Hiding stuff. That was new. I'd been called a lot of things in my life. Stubborn, too serious, hard to read. Nobody ever accused me of being sneaky. Not with money, not with family. I called Denise on my break. "Who's saying I'm hiding money?" She didn't ask what I meant. That told me plenty. "Marcus, "Don't do this right now," she said. "Emily's overwhelmed. People are just stressed." "That doesn't answer my question." A pause. Then her voice softened the way it did when she wanted me to back up without making her say it. "My sister said you seemed guarded, like you don't want to help unless you control everything." I let out a breath that felt like it scraped my chest on the way out. "Control what? I'm not even in the emails half the time." "Because you don't respond," Denise said, sharper now. "You disappear, then we have to handle it." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was backwards enough to be impressive. "You handle it by telling vendors to wait on me," I said. "You handle it by making decisions and sending me the bill." Denise's tone dropped. "Are you going to pay the band deposit or not?" There it was, the only part that mattered. I didn't argue anymore. I ended the call and sat there in my truck, hands on the wheel, feeling like I'd just watched my own marriage step over a line and keep walking. That evening, I logged into the bank app Denise and I used for household stuff. A few transfers stood out, small enough to avoid attention, frequent enough to add up. Payments to a business account I didn't recognize. The name looked familiar though, like something I'd seen on a holiday card. Carter Events LLC. Emily. I pulled up the account history and scrolled until my eyes blurred. The timing matched every last-minute change she'd mentioned. Linen upgrades, seating adjustments, rush fees. All of it routed through her company like she'd turned her own wedding into a side hustle. Maybe there was a reason. Maybe the planner insisted. Maybe Denise knew and didn't tell me because she thought I'd overreact. I tried to give them both the benefit of the doubt, the way I always did, but the facts sat there, plain and cold. I called the bank the next morning and asked for statements going back a full year. Then I changed the password. Not with drama, just with quiet precision. After that, I opened a folder on my laptop labeled Home and started saving everything. Emails, invoices, screenshots, PDFs. No speeches, no confrontation, just a record. At lunch, I emailed the wedding vendor directly. "Please send me the full contract and itemized list. I need to review before any further payments." Within 10 minutes, Emily texted me. "Why are you doing this? Mom said you'd cover it." I set the phone down and kept eating, chewing slower than usual, letting the shape of this new reality settle in. Then I opened my contacts and removed Denise's relatives from the family group chat one by one, thumb hovering between each name like I was trimming a wire without cutting the wrong one. I didn't respond to Emily's text. I let the vendor emails sit too. The next few days turned into a strange quiet, like everybody was holding their breath and waiting for me to fall back into place. By the time the wedding weekend arrived, Denise acted like nothing had happened. She called to confirm my flight details, asked if I'd packed a suit, reminded me to smile in photos. "Emily's been through a lot," she said. "Don't make this about you." I didn't answer. I booked my own hotel room in New Orleans and kept the confirmation to myself. The ceremony went the way ceremonies do. People hugged, cameras flashed. Denise's relatives moved in clusters, talking over each other, laughing too loud. Every few minutes, someone touched my arm, asked how work was going, then drifted away before I could finish a sentence. Emily looked radiant. She also looked straight past me, like I was a chair nobody wanted to sit in. When she did speak to me, it was in quick commands. "Make sure you're in the front row for the family photos. Don't leave after the ceremony. We need you for the reception stuff." I stood where she told me. I smiled when Denise leaned in. I kept my hands out of my pockets. The small discipline felt familiar, the kind of control I'd learned in job sites and boardrooms. Hold your posture, watch your tone, don't give anyone a reason to call you unstable. The reception started with the usual noise. Plates clinked, people found their tables. A DJ played songs everyone pretended to know. I stayed near the edge, close enough to participate, far enough to breathe. Denise's sister Sheila came over with a drink and leaned in like she was sharing a secret. "You doing okay?" she asked. "Fine." She nodded, eyes sliding toward Emily across the room. "Just, you know, she's got opinions." I almost told Sheila that opinions were one thing, entitlement was another. Instead, I thanked her and watched her walk away. Then Emily climbed onto the small platform near the head table. Someone handed her a microphone. The room softened into a hush, the kind people give when they expect something sweet. Emily smiled wide, the smile that never reached her eyes. "Before we eat, I just want to say something," she said. "Because today is about family. Real family." A few people chuckled like they knew what was coming. Denise's hand tightened around her napkin. I felt that, even from a few tables away, the way a room can tilt without anyone moving. Emily scanned the crowd, then landed on me like she'd been saving me for last. "Some people show up and think they're part of this just because they paid for a few things," she said, laughing into the mic. "But let's be honest. You're not real family. You're my mom's husband. That's it. So you should know your place." The laughter died fast. Chairs creaked. Forks paused halfway to mouths. I heard a soft, "Oh my God," from someone behind me. Denise didn't stand. She didn't reach for the microphone. She didn't even look at me. Her gaze stayed down, fixed on the tablecloth like it had answers. My throat tightened, not from tears, but from the old instinct to defend myself, to explain, to convince. That instinct rose up like it always did. Then I pressed it back down. I stood up without rushing. My chair scraped the floor, loud enough to carry. Emily's smile faltered for half a second, then returned, sharper. I didn't point. I didn't curse. I didn't make a scene. I walked, past the tables, past Sheila's stunned face, past a cousin who started to speak and stopped. At the doors, I heard someone whisper my name, like they hoped I'd turn and give them a version of me they could understand. Outside, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I kept moving anyway, calling a ride with my eyes on the screen, but my mind already somewhere else. Back at the hotel, I changed out of the suit. I folded it carefully, like it still mattered, then zipped my bag. A text came in from Denise. "Where are you?" I didn't answer. I checked out early, got to the airport, and booked the next flight to Houston. When I walked into the house just after midnight, everything looked the same. Framed photos, throw pillows, the scent of Denise's perfume in the hallway. I grabbed a duffel from the closet, pulled out only what I needed, and started packing in steady motions, stopping once to open the safe in my office and slide my passport and a folder of documents into the side pocket. The duffel sat half open on the bed when my phone started ringing. Denise first, then Sheila, then a number I didn't recognize, back to back like somebody had hit a panic button. I let it ring while I finished packing. Shirts rolled, toiletries tossed in without care, keys, wallet, charger. I left the suit hanging in the closet. It belonged to that room full of people who watched me get cut down and decided silence was polite. By the time I got in my car, my screen showed 12 missed calls. I didn't drive far, just to a small motel off the highway outside Houston, where nobody would know my name. The clerk slid the keycard across the counter without looking up. I liked that. Inside the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and finally checked my voicemail. Denise's voice came through tight and thin. "Marcus, please, call me. People are asking questions. Emily is embarrassed. Just come home so we can talk." Emily's voicemail followed. Her tone had changed, less sharp, more urgent. "You can't just leave like that. You're making us look crazy. Call my mom back." Us. Not her. Not the family. Us. Like I'd signed up for a team that only remembered I existed when the scoreboard mattered. I set the phone down and opened the folder of documents I'd taken from the safe. Contracts, statements, deeds, things I used to keep organized because I believed order kept people honest. A new message buzzed in, not a call this time. An email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject: "Please read. This involves your signature." No greeting, no name. Just one sentence and an attachment. I stared at it for a long minute, thumb hovering. Then I opened it. The attachment was a scanned form, business credit paperwork with my name typed in clean blocks, my signature at the bottom. The signature looked like mine. It also looked wrong in the way a copied key looks right until you try to turn the lock. The slant was off. The pressure didn't match. Even the date was suspicious, placed on a day I'd been on site in Atlanta from dawn to dusk. My stomach tightened, but my mind stayed clear. That was the part of me I trusted, the part that had kept crews safe, budgets tight, timelines real. Feelings could wait. Facts came first. I called David Miller. He answered on the second ring. "You okay?" "I got something. I'm going to forward it." I sent the email. He stayed quiet while he opened it. "Marcus," he said finally, "this isn't wedding drama. This is fraud. If somebody used your name for credit, for contracts, that's criminal. It could be a mistake." "No, man. Mistakes don't look this deliberate." I leaned back against the headboard and let that settle without fighting it. Denise hadn't asked for my side at the reception. Emily had laughed into a microphone. Now a stranger was sending me forged paperwork like they couldn't live with it anymore. David kept going, steady. "You need to protect yourself. Lock your accounts. Pull your credit report. Call the bank. And don't talk to them on the phone like this is a family argument. Anything you say can get twisted." Twisted. That word hit different now, because I could already see how they'd use the story. By morning, it started. A Facebook post from Sheila's husband. Sad when a man walks out on his wife's family during a sacred moment. A text from Denise's cousin. "How could you abandon Denise like that, after everything she's done for you?" Even Trevor, the supplier guy, sent me a short message. "Heard you dipped. You good?" I didn't reply to any of it. I watched it spread instead, like a stain moving through fabric. Nobody mentioned what Emily said. Nobody mentioned Denise's silence. The narrative arrived fully formed. Marcus got offended. Marcus got petty. Marcus left a good woman to deal with chaos. I called the bank. I changed every password. I put a freeze on my credit. I asked for copies of anything opened in my name in the last 2 years. While I worked, Denise called again. When I finally answered, I kept my voice flat. "Where are you?" she asked. "This is humiliating." "For who?" A pause. "For all of us," she said. "People are talking, Marcus. They were talking when your daughter called me an outsider in front of everyone." "Don't do that," Denise snapped. She didn't mean it like... She meant it enough to say it into a microphone. Silence on the line. Then her voice dropped into something colder. "If you don't come back, you're going to regret it." I almost asked what she meant. Instead, I looked at the email again, at the fake signature sitting under my name like a trap. "I'm not coming back tonight," I said. "Marcus, I'll contact you through an attorney if I need to." Denise exhaled sharply, like I'd insulted her. Then she hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at the blank screen, and opened my laptop to pull my credit report, scrolling through accounts I didn't recognize while the motel's ice machine rattled somewhere outside the door. The credit report loaded line by line, and every unfamiliar account felt like a hand reaching into my pocket. A store card I never applied for, a business line tied to an address I hadn't lived at, 2 recent inquiries from lenders I didn't recognize. I saved everything as PDFs, labeled each file with the date, then booked the first flight back to Atlanta. If I stayed in Houston, I'd get pulled into arguments. If I stayed quiet in Atlanta, I could work. David picked me up from the airport and didn't ask for details in the car. He just drove, letting me breathe. "You got a lawyer?" he asked once we were on the highway. "Not yet. We fixed that today." By noon, I sat across from a woman named Karen Whitfield in a small office near Midtown. She looked about my age, wore a navy blazer, and spoke like someone who didn't waste words. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "tell me what you know, not what you feel, what you can prove." I slid my folder across her desk. The forged paperwork, the bank statements, the vendor emails that used my name without my consent. Karen didn't react the way Denise's family would have. No gasps, no outrage for show. She read, made notes, asked for timelines. "When did you notice unusual transfers?" "When I searched the account history," I said. "They were small, repeated. And you were asked to sign documents without reviewing them?" I hesitated, hearing how that sounded. "Yes." Karen nodded once, like she'd heard it before. "That doesn't make you guilty," she said. "It makes you vulnerable. We're going to close that vulnerability." She had me sign a limited retainer agreement. Then she walked me through steps like a checklist: fraud affidavit with the bank, dispute letters for the credit bureaus, a request for copies of any documents bearing my signature, and a formal notice to Denise and Emily that all financial communication would go through counsel. "Do not warn them," Karen added. "Do not argue with them. Silence is not weakness when it's backed by action." I left her office with a stack of forms and a strange calm. The kind that comes when you stop hoping someone will change and start planning like they won't. Back at my apartment, I set up a new email account just for this situation. I moved every file into a cloud folder with a password Denise would never guess. Then I started calling banks, vendors, anyone who had my name on their paperwork. Some were helpful. Some acted annoyed, like I was creating extra work. "Sir, if your wife authorized—" "She's not my wife on these documents," I said, keeping my voice even. "I am. Send me the originals." Late afternoon, an alert popped up on my phone. Attempted login to my primary email from an unfamiliar device. Another one followed from my banking app. Then a text from an unknown number. "You think you're smart." No name, no context, just that. I didn't respond. I screenshot it and saved it in the folder. A minute later, another text arrived. "Stop making this complicated." My pulse jumped, but my hand stayed steady. I forwarded both messages to Karen with 2 words: new development. David called around the same time. "You getting weird stuff?" he asked. "Yeah. That means they notice the lock is changing," he said. "Be careful." I was careful. I didn't go to my regular gym. I didn't stop at the usual grocery store. I changed my route to work sites and kept my truck locked, even in places I normally wouldn't think twice. On paper, my days looked normal. Meetings, emails, site walkthroughs. But in the gaps, I kept building my case. I requested notary logs. I asked for signature verification. I pulled old calendar entries to prove where I'd been on dates tied to suspicious documents. Denise sent one email to my work account. "Marcus, this is unnecessary. We can fix this as a family." Karen's reply went out 10 minutes later, short and formal. "Please direct all future communication regarding finances or allegations to my office." After that, Denise went quiet. Emily didn't. She messaged through social media after I blocked her number. "You're really doing this? After everything?" I didn't type back. I clicked download data on the conversation, saved it, then blocked that account too. Around midnight, I sat at my kitchen table with the paperwork spread out, checking dates against statements, statements against emails, emails against the forged signature. Patterns started to form. Not a mistake, not stress, a system. Another attempted login alert flashed on my screen, followed by an email from a vendor I'd never contacted. "Marcus, we were told you approved this change." I stared at it, then opened the attachment, reading the approval line that carried my name while my signature sat beneath it, slightly crooked, like someone had drawn it in a hurry. I forwarded the vendor email to Karen and went to bed with my phone on the nightstand, screen down. Sleep came in short pieces. Every time my eyes closed, my mind kept working through numbers, names, dates, as if I could solve it faster by refusing rest. In the morning, Karen called before I left for the site. "Mr. Johnson, you received anything in the mail?" "Not yet." "You will," she said. "Their side is going to try to flip this. Expect pressure." Pressure showed up by noon. A courier delivered an envelope to my office trailer. The return address belonged to a law firm in Houston. Inside was a letter on heavy paper, signed by an attorney representing Emily Carter. It claimed I was withholding marital assets, abandoning my spouse, and interfering with a contracted wedding agreement. It demanded I release funds immediately or face legal action, including claims of emotional distress. I read it twice, not because it was confusing, but because it was bold. They weren't just defending themselves. They were attacking, hoping I'd scramble, apologize, hand over money to make the noise stop. David showed up later with coffee and saw the letter on my desk. "That's a move," he said. "It's theater. Still costs time if you ignore it." Karen's email response landed in my inbox within an hour. Short, firm. She requested documentation for every allegation and warned that any misuse of my signature would be referred to law enforcement. No emotion, no pleading, just a door closing. After that, the family silence became official. Denise's number went straight to voicemail every time I called. Her mother blocked me on social media. Sheila unfriended me. Even people who used to send happy birthday messages disappeared like I'd never bought them dinner, never fixed their car, never covered a hotel room when they came to visit. A week earlier, I would have felt the sting and tried to repair it. Now it just confirmed what David had said in that truck. I was responsible, but I wasn't respected. The old wound still found its way in, though. On my lunch break, I sat in my truck and scrolled through my phone contacts until I hit a name I hadn't called in a long time. My son, Malik. He lived with his mother in Florida. We talked, but not enough. The distance started years ago when my first marriage fell apart. I'd been the stable one, the quiet one, the man who paid child support on time and showed up when he could. But stability didn't guarantee closeness. I stared at Malik's number and felt that familiar guilt rise up. The same guilt that made me overcompensate with Denise's family. If I couldn't fix what I broke with my own child, I tried to build something perfect somewhere else. I didn't call Malik. Not yet. I couldn't bring that mess into his life. My phone buzzed again. Not Denise, not Emily. My company's finance director. "Marcus, you got a minute?" she asked. Her tone was careful, the way people talk when they're about to bring bad news. "What's going on?" "We received a notice from a lender. It references you personally. There's a hold request tied to a line of credit. It might be a mistake, but it's impacting the project account." My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice even. "Send me everything you have." She did. I opened the attachment and saw my name in bold. A business line, one I hadn't opened, linked to an address in Houston, and a guarantee signature that looked like mine. The lender was requesting verification. Until then, they were freezing certain transfers connected to my tax ID. That meant my project could stall. Materials could get delayed. Subcontractors could stop showing up. All because someone had dragged my personal identity into a financial mess and attached it to my professional reputation. I walked into the site office, pulled my superintendent aside, and told him to reroute payments through a different internal account for the week. No explanation beyond administrative issue. He nodded. He trusted me because on-site trust is earned through consistency, not through being liked. Back in my truck, I called Karen. "They hit my work," I said. "How?" "Credit line tied to my name. It's touching project funds." Karen didn't curse. She didn't gasp. She shifted into action. "Email me the lender notice, right now. Then call the lender and request a fraud hold review. I'll follow with a formal affidavit." "This is Emily." "Most likely," Karen said. "And that makes this bigger." Bigger meant I could lose more than money. I could lose the one place where my name still meant something. That evening, another message came through from the unknown number. "You're going to ruin your own life over pride." I stared at it, then opened the photo of the forged signature from the vendor contract, zooming in until the edges blurred. Pride wasn't what had me sitting in that truck with my hands clenched around my phone. It was survival. I typed a single sentence to Karen. "I want to file a police report." Then I put the truck in drive and headed toward the precinct, keeping my eyes on the road while the letter from Emily's attorney sat on the passenger seat like a dare. The precinct lobby smelled like old paperwork and impatience. A tired-looking officer behind the desk asked why I was there. I slid my folder across the counter and kept my voice simple. Identity theft, forged signatures, business credit opened in my name. He flipped through the pages, eyes moving faster once he saw the lender notice. He gave me a form, told me to sit, and called someone in the back. I filled out the report without adding extra drama. Dates, addresses, account numbers. It felt like writing a timeline for a project delay. Except this time, the delay was my own life. When I walked out, Karen had already emailed instructions for the next steps. I followed them that night, then went to work the next morning like nothing had changed. That was the only way to keep the project steady. The problem didn't get to eat my career. Around lunch, an unknown number called again. I almost let it ring out, but something in me said, "Answer once and listen." "Marcus Johnson?" a woman asked. Her voice sounded cautious, like she expected me to hang up. "Speaking." "My name is Lena Brooks. I used to work for Denise Carter's brother, the family company, accounting." I gripped the phone tighter. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I saw your name pop up in a thread online," she said. "They're saying you skipped out on your wife and tried to sabotage your stepdaughter. People are tagging businesses. It's getting ugly." I didn't correct her language. Stepdaughter was their word, not mine. But I didn't have energy to debate labels. "What do you know, Lena?" A pause. Then she exhaled like she'd made a decision. "I know Emily has been using other people's names for a while," she said. "Not always forging signatures, but moving money through accounts that aren't hers, hiding things. When I questioned it, I got pushed out. My throat went tight again, but my mind stayed locked in. Do you have proof? Some, she said. I kept copies because I didn't trust what I was seeing. I didn't think I'd ever need them, but when I heard your name, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. We agreed to meet after work at a coffee shop in a busy strip mall, the kind of place where nobody pays attention to two people talking business. Lena arrived first, sitting with a small envelope on the table. Mid-30s, neat hair, tired eyes. She didn't waste time. Emily acted like she was untouchable, Lena said, like family rules didn't apply to her. She'd tell vendors to bill Marcus because Marcus won't say no. That's what she said, word for word. I sat still, letting that sentence land without reacting. Hearing it out loud felt different than guessing it in my head. Lena slid the envelope toward me. Inside were printed emails and transaction screenshots. Several showed Emily directing someone to use the old signature file. Others referenced moving charges through Carter Events LLC, then reimbursing herself from a family account. One screenshot made my stomach turn. An email chain where Emily wrote, "If he asks, tell him Denise approved it." I looked up at Lena. "Why didn't you report it?" Lena's jaw tightened. I tried to raise concerns internally. Denise's brother told me to stay in my lane. Denise herself. She'd smile and say Emily was just trying to make things happen. When you work for a family business, you learn fast what gets you fired. I didn't blame her. People protect their paycheck. I'd spent years protecting other people's comfort. "Can you sign a statement?" I asked. Lena nodded, but her hands shook a little as she reached for her coffee. "I can. I just don't want them coming after me." "They already are," I said, and surprised myself by how steady it sounded. "But I'm not letting them do it alone." On my way back to my truck, my phone buzzed with another notification. Someone had tagged my company in a post. Sheila's husband again, this time with more heat. "Ladies, beware a man who abandons family. He'll abandon you too." Comments stacked underneath it. People I didn't know, judging a story they didn't witness. Some were cruel, some were smug. A few asked what actually happened at the wedding, and nobody answered those. I took screenshots, saved them, and sent them to Karen. Defamation wasn't the main issue, but it painted motive. Pressure me publicly so I'd cave privately. Emily texted from another new number within minutes, like she'd been watching. "Look what you caused. Fix it." I stared at the message, then opened Lena's documents again, scanning the dates. The same names repeated, the same vendor codes, the same pattern of moving money, shifting blame, hiding approval behind Denise's silence. The weak point wasn't Emily's mouth. It wasn't her attitude. It was the trail she couldn't erase because she'd left it everywhere. I forwarded Lena's evidence to Karen and typed one more sentence. "She can deny me. She can't deny this." Then I drove home, unlocked my front door, and set the envelope on the table beside the folder that had started as home, watching the stack of truth grow while my phone kept lighting up with new tags and new messages that I didn't open. The conference room in Karen Whitfield's Houston office was plain in a way that made people behave. No family photos on the walls, no soft chairs, just a table, a pitcher of water, and a clock that kept moving whether anyone liked it or not. I arrived early and sat with my hands folded, not because I was trying to look calm, but because I needed them still. Karen laid out folders in front of her, the way I lay out plans on a job site. Everything in order, nothing extra. "They confirmed," she said. "Emily and Denise will be here at 2. Emily's attorney, too. Denise agreed to come?" Karen's mouth tightened slightly. She didn't have much choice once subpoenas were discussed. At 2 on the dot, the door opened. Emily walked in first, dressed like she was going to a meeting about her future, not her past. Denise followed, face pale, eyes fixed forward. Behind them came a man in a gray suit with a leather briefcase and a practiced smile. Emily didn't sit right away. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "So this is what you're doing," she said. "Trying to ruin my life." Karen didn't let the room warm up. "Ms. Carter, have a seat," she said. "We're here to address specific allegations and documentation." Emily dropped into the chair hard, then crossed her arms. Denise sat beside her, hands clasped so tight her knuckles looked lighter than the rest of her skin. Emily's attorney introduced himself, then launched into it like he'd rehearsed on the drive over. "My client maintains Mr. Johnson has been financially controlling and retaliatory," he said. "He abandoned the marital home and has interfered with contractual obligations related to the wedding." Karen lifted a hand. "Before we discuss feelings, we'll discuss signatures," she said. "Mr. Johnson has filed a police report for identity theft. We also have documentation indicating his signature was used without consent." Emily let out a short laugh. "That's ridiculous." Karen slid a page across the table, not toward Emily, toward her attorney. "This is a lender application submitted with Mr. Johnson's name and social security number. The IP address used to submit it traces to an internet account registered at Ms. Carter's apartment. The same device accessed Mr. Johnson's email multiple times last month." Emily's laugh stopped. She blinked, then recovered fast. "People share Wi-Fi. That proves nothing." Karen didn't argue. She simply opened another folder. "Here are vendor emails instructing charges be routed through Carter Events LLC, along with bank transfers from the shared household account to that LLC. These transfers occurred on the same days vendors marked invoices paid by Marcus." Emily leaned forward, eyes sharp. "That's my business. I was coordinating. Everyone knew that." Denise's face twitched at everyone. She stared at the table like she wanted to disappear into it. I finally spoke, keeping my voice low. "If everyone knew, why did you tell vendors to bill me directly?" Emily turned on me. "Because you were paying anyway. You always pay. That's your thing." "My thing," I repeated, tasting how ugly it sounded out loud. She shrugged, like I was being dramatic about a simple truth. "Don't act like you didn't like being the hero." Denise flinched. That was the first real movement from her. And it wasn't in my direction. It was away from Emily, like she'd just realized she was sitting next to a stranger. Emily's attorney cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Even if there were misunderstandings, the appropriate course would have been marital mediation, not a public spectacle." Karen's tone stayed level. "There was a spectacle," she said. "It happened at the wedding. Mr. Johnson did not create it." Emily's eyes flashed. "Oh my God. Are we still on that? It was a joke." My hands stayed folded, but my jaw set. "It wasn't a joke to the room that went silent," I said. "It wasn't a joke to your mother who sat there and said nothing." Denise's head lifted. For the first time, she looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but her face didn't soften. "Marcus." "I didn't know what to do," she whispered. Karen placed another document on the table, this one angled toward Denise. "Mrs. Johnson, this is an email where Emily instructs a vendor to use the old signature file," Karen said. "We also have a statement from Lena Brooks, former accounting staff at your family company, confirming Emily directed similar practices and concealed transactions." Denise's mouth parted slightly. "Lena?" Emily shot up in her seat. "She's lying. She got fired." Karen didn't blink. "Ms. Brooks resigned. We have her termination paperwork, and we have the emails." Emily's attorney reached for the folder, flipping pages faster now, the practiced smile gone. He paused on a screenshot, then another, then stopped altogether. Emily kept talking, voice rising. "You can't prove I signed anything. You can't prove..." Karen slid one last sheet forward, a handwriting analyst's preliminary comparison, a notary log, a time-stamped file history showing when my signature image was downloaded and attached. Emily's words broke apart mid-sentence. Denise made a small sound, like air leaving her lungs. She looked at Emily the way someone looks at a cracked foundation they didn't want to inspect. Karen spoke again, still calm. "Here are your options," she said. "Cooperate with the fraud investigation and begin restitution, or we proceed with civil action and refer additional evidence to law enforcement." Emily's eyes darted to Denise. "Mom, tell them." Denise didn't answer right away. Her lips moved, then stopped. She looked at me again, and whatever she saw on my face made her look down. Emily's attorney closed the folder slowly, like he was trying not to make noise. "Ms. Carter," he said quietly, "we need to speak privately." Emily stared at him, stunned. Then her gaze swung back to me, anger and disbelief fighting for space. "You planned this," she said. "You set me up." I stood, not fast, not slow. "No," I said. "You did." Karen gathered the documents, already moving into the next steps with her pen. Emily kept breathing hard, hands shaking now that the performance had run out of room. I walked to the door without looking back, pulled it open, and stepped into the hallway, where my phone immediately buzzed with a new email notification from Karen's office marked "Police Follow-Up." And I kept walking, with the duffel strap still cutting into my shoulder from where I'd carried it in. The elevator took too long, and by the time I reached the parking lot, my phone had stacked 3 more notifications. Karen's email, a missed call from an unknown number, then Denise, twice, back to back. I didn't answer. I started the car, drove without music, and let the day settle into my bones the way concrete settles when you stop stirring it. Karen's message was straightforward. The police wanted a formal statement. The lender had flagged the fraudulent line. 2 vendors agreed to cooperate once they saw the legal notice. Everything moved the way systems move when you give them the right paperwork. When I got back to the motel, I spread my documents on the bed and checked items off a list Karen had sent. Affidavit signed, credit bureau disputes filed, bank accounts separated, insurance updated. No drama, no pleading, just steps. A knock came at the door. David stood there with a paper bag and his usual steady face. "You eat?" he asked. I took the bag, felt the warmth through it. Not yet. We sat at the small table by the window. David unwrapped his sandwich like he was giving me time to speak without forcing it. "How'd she look?" he asked. "Emily?" Like somebody finally told her no. David nodded once. "And Denise?" I stared at the wax paper, at the grease stains spreading slowly. Like she realized she bet on the wrong person. David didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. That mattered. He let the truth be what it was, late, but still true. My phone buzzed again. Denise, this time as a text. "Please, just talk to me." I stared at the words until they blurred, then typed back one sentence. "Send anything you need to say through Karen." My thumb hovered over the send button for a second longer than it needed to. Not because I wanted to keep the door open, but because part of me still believed I could fix people if I explained myself the right way. That part had been running my life for years. It was the same part that made me sign documents I didn't read. The same part that made me pay bills without asking questions. The same part that kept me quiet at a wedding while someone laughed at my name. I hit send. David watched me put the phone down. "That hard?" he asked. "It's familiar," I said. "That's what makes it hard." He leaned back in his chair. "Familiar doesn't mean safe." After he left, I called Malik. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice cautious, like he wasn't sure what version of me he'd get. "Dad? Hey son, you got a minute?" "Yeah, what's up?" I didn't dump the whole story on him. I didn't ask for sympathy. I just told him I'd be in Atlanta for a while, that I wanted to see him soon, that I'd let him know dates. There was a pause, then his tone softened. "Okay, that's cool. Let me know." We talked a little about work, about his classes, about nothing special. When we hung up, my chest felt lighter in a way I hadn't expected. Not because my life had suddenly gotten better, but because I'd stopped trying to earn a place in someone else's family by ignoring my own. Over the next 2 weeks, consequences landed without me pushing them. Emily's attorney withdrew once Karen filed the fraud documentation. The lender opened an investigation. The business line froze, then reversed. Vendors demanded repayment directly from Carter Events LLC instead of my name. The online posts disappeared one by one, as people realized the story wasn't as clean as they'd been told. Denise tried again through email. I never wanted it to go this far. Karen replied for me. "Mrs. Johnson, your choices contributed to the current legal exposure. Mr. Johnson will not engage outside formal channels." That was the closest thing to a goodbye she was going to get. I returned to Houston once, midday, when I knew Denise would be at work. I didn't walk through the house like a man sneaking. I moved like someone collecting property from a place he no longer lived. I took my tools, a few boxes of personal papers, and the watch my father gave me before he passed. I left the rest. On the kitchen counter, I set my house key beside a short note with Karen's contact information. No apology, no argument, no explanation that would get twisted into a conversation. Back in the car, I drove straight to the bank and finalized the separation of accounts. Then I went to the post office and filed a change of address. A clerk asked if I wanted mail forwarding for the whole household, or just myself. Just me, I said. A week later, Karen confirmed Emily's restitution plan was in writing, tied to civil liability and the ongoing investigation. Denise's name was on several documents too, not as the one forging, but as the one approving, enabling, looking away. That's how adults get held accountable sometimes, not for what they did with their hands, but for what they allowed with their silence. On my last night in Houston, I checked into a hotel near the airport, set my alarm for an early flight, and laid out my clothes for the morning. My phone stayed quiet for the first time in weeks. I plugged it into the charger anyway, turned it face down, and opened my laptop to review tomorrow's agenda for the Atlanta project, scanning the list like it was the simplest thing in the world to keep building forward.